Enzo Hayes, former CEO of a multi-billion-dollar startup, was currently battling a stubborn stain on the third-floor landing of Holy Redeemer Church. The irony wasn't subtle. He'd traded corporate jets and endless venture capital for a uniform stained with industrial cleaner and a wage that barely covered his utilities. He was the night shift custodian. His only company was the dull whine of the floor buffer and the occasional maintenance crisis. Tonight's crisis involved the boiler room heat, which was running too high. He traced the issue back to a dusty, rarely used wing. While fixing the thermostat, he discovered a large mobile whiteboard propped upright leaning against a stack of storage bins inside the youth utility closet. The board, usually reserved for youth group schedules, was covered in prayer requests. The handwriting was a riot of teenage angst, but one entry stood out, written in bold blue marker. "Please help us find Mr. Denton's squirrel mug. He's been really sad since it disappeared behind the heating unit. It was the only ugly thing he ever loved." Mr. Denton was the groundskeeper, an older man with perpetually grease-stained hands. Enzo knew the mug. He'd seen the ceramic atrocity, a startled squirrel clinging to a giant blue coffee bean, just yesterday, rolling precariously towards the ancient heating unit as he adjusted a leaking pipe. Enzo pulled out a rag and erased the mug request. He spent the next 20 minutes fishing the squirrel mug out from behind the pipes using a length of coat hanger and sheer logistical determination. "I just ran a high-stakes anonymous op for a chipped ceramic cup," Enzo thought, shaking his head. "Guess I swapped venture capital for validation via coffee cup. No cap, this is my life now." He polished the mug on his shirt until the squirrel gleamed. Problem solved. Loop closed. He left the mug on the floor buffer and finished his shift, low-key curious to see if his anonymous effort had produced a result. The next night, the church felt different. Enzo went straight to the old wing after clocking in. He found Mr. Denton's desk, the hub of the groundskeeping operation, near the back loading dock. Enzo set the squirrel mug dead center, right where Mr. Denton would put his elbow when he sat down. It was visible, undeniable proof of a successful retrieval operation. He stepped back, feeling a tiny, quiet pulse of satisfaction. He stopped at the youth utility closet. The mug request was still gone, but where he'd erased it, there was new writing. Same thick blue marker, this time messy, almost vibrating with excitement and punctuated with a bold star. "OMG, thank you so much. It was right there on his desk." Mr. D almost cried. He thought it was gone forever. It really was a miracle. Enzo stared at the word miracle. He hadn't prayed, he just clocked the inventory. But to this unseen kid, his tiny logistics task was a sign of something massive. The warmth that spread through him was totally unfamiliar. It was deeper than pride and way more satisfying than watching a bank balance grow. Beneath that note, someone else had written a fresh request in desperate green. It was an urgent plea from an adult. At 6 a.m., Enzo was tidying the industrial sink in the janitor's closet when Russell clocked in. Russell was in his mid-50s, slight, and moved like a guy running on fumes. He always handled the morning setup. "Morning, Enzo. Blessed day," Enzo replied, carefully avoiding engagement. "You know, that squirrel mug, the one that Mr. Denton loves, that was a nice thing. Whoever moved it, they knew exactly where Denton sits. Take someone who really knows the workflow here, you know? The Lord always provides, usually through someone paying attention." That night, the green marker request on the whiteboard was consuming him. He found the whiteboard upright in the youth utility closet. It was neatly centered in thick green marker. "Lord, please grant me the strength to find a second job quickly. We need the income to cover Sarah's wedding, and I don't want my beautiful girl to worry. Please guide me." It was a sincere, emotional prayer, a desperate plea from a father. Enzo confirmed with discarded invoices that Russell's daughter Sarah was indeed getting married. Project Daughter's Happiness, budget unlimited, Enzo thought. This is a solvable problem. It's just a variable deficiency. I've funded entire nations cheaper than this wedding, and the result is guaranteed. He settled on the amount needed to cover the catering and a down payment on a reception hall, $4,950. The next night, Enzo arrived with a bank envelope, bulky and awkward. He wrote R.J. Lenkins on the front. He secured the thick envelope firmly to the lower corner of the whiteboard with heavy-duty duct tape right next to Russell's prayer, making sure the name was visible. Enzo quickly scribbled a note onto the board using the green marker. "Your prayers have been heard." He erased his response, leaving no trace but the lingering scent of dry erase ink. He went back to his routine, heart pounding with the secret satisfaction of a perfectly executed, unethical charity drop.
The next night, Enzo went straight to the youth utility closet. The duct tape was gone, and the beautiful, desperate prayer was erased. In its place, scrolled high in the corner in hurried, emotional handwriting, was a new, singular message. "Helper, I told my Sarah tonight that a miracle had occurred. I told her about the prayer I wrote on the whiteboard and how you answered it. I have never been so grateful. Thank you for being God's vessel. You are truly a blessing." Enzo stared at the writing. Vessel. Truly a blessing. It was Russell. Enzo hadn't just solved a financial problem, he'd accidentally confirmed Russell's entire theology. He, the hardened agnostic, had acted as a perfect conduit for a God he didn't believe in, and in doing so, he'd had the most significant non-monetary impact of his whole damn life. The floor buffer sat near the supply closet, silent and ignored. It was 11:30 p.m. Enzo went straight to the youth utility closet. The whiteboard was now nearly buried beneath a riot of fresh marker requests. The handwriting wasn't just looping teenage script anymore. The logistics are spiraling, he thought. Russell told the whole staff, this is going to be a thing. He realized Russell's faith had turned the custodian closet into a viral sensation among the administration. "Vessel," Enzo muttered. "I'm the janitor. I'm just a logistics guy. This is so unreal." He studied the board. The requests were adult and heavy. "Heavenly Father, please help me reconcile this budget deficit before the audit. I have checked every line item, and the numbers just will not balance. Lord, guide my eyes." Mrs. Dable. "Dear Jesus, please soften the heart of my sister, Aunt Carol, so she can forgive my dad. It's been 5 years, and the family is broken. Please, Lord, grant me a decent, reliable used truck. My old one died last week, and I can't afford the commute much longer. I need reliable transportation to serve your church." Okay, these are different tiers, Enzo thought. Truck is measurable asset replacement, easy money. Budget deficit is an internal liability, a major boundary violation. The forgiveness prayer, that's a black hole. He quickly used his resources to set up a complex, anonymous financial maneuver designed to force reconciliation. He established a long-term fund in Aunt Carol's name, structured so that her estranged father would have to act as the required trustee for mandatory monthly disbursements. "I can't fix the feelings, but I can force the paperwork." It's a logistical solution to a relational problem. Enzo then considered the overall load. He calculated the potential costs for the heavy requests. Sammy's physical therapy? He was looking at $500,000, maybe more, spread over years. You can't buy that solution. That's a bottomless pit. He tried to write off the successful interventions, the mug, the money, as statistical probabilities, but the coincidence rate was statistically impossible. What's the profit margin on this faith? What's the ROI on an answered prayer? He hated not knowing the numbers. He grabbed the green marker, the official color of the helper. He looked at the budget request and the forgiveness prayer. Both were totally outside his boundaries. He left them, marking his boundary with silence. Then the truck request. That was a measurable problem. That was pure, solvable asset replacement. Enzo wrote a single brief line beneath the request. "Your prayer is heard. Check the church bulletin next week." He erased his response. then quietly started arranging the purchase of a reliable used vehicle through his network. He didn't care about the square footage tonight. He cared about the requests. Enzo realized the job hadn't humbled him. It had given him a higher purpose that only his unique set of resources, unlimited money, zero ego, and perfect anonymity, could fulfill. He was an agnostic running a highly efficient, clandestine ministry, and for the first time since he signed those exit papers, he didn't feel empty. He felt useful. The weight was building. The requests were spreading beyond the closet. Enzo found notes tucked into a magnetic board in the daycare classroom and under a calendar in the volunteer coordinator's office. Heavenly Father, please watch over little Sammy. Guide his parents to the right doctors and ease the burden of the physical therapy costs. Show them your grace in this storm. Enzo felt a cold punch of reality. His wealth was powerful, but fundamentally inadequate for the problems that truly broke people. He returned to the utility closet. The difficult requests remained, heavy with silence. Mrs. Gable's audit anxiety and the plea for forgiveness. He had discreetly followed up on his financial intervention. His trust had been rejected, and Carol's lawyer had flagged the mystery funds, or she simply refused to engage with her father even on paper. The money remained untouched. It wasn't a logistical failure. It was a failure of the human heart to accept engineered grace, he realized. He calculated the cost of 5 years of separation, the missed holidays, the psychological damage, and saw the true value was infinite. I can buy a small country, but not one moment of true reconciliation. Looking at the Aunt Carol prayer, he felt an unfamiliar warmth, a wave of empathy. He saw himself in these desperate scribbles. He realized his money gave him the means, but facing these complex prayers was giving him the purpose he'd been chasing. He found himself thinking, just give them the strength to deal with this, Lord. He immediately shut the thought down. I'm not praying. I'm just wishing for a good outcome. He knew the truck owner would have his new reliable vehicle soon. That was a win. But looking at the crushing burdens he couldn't touch, he recognized that his rules were less about protecting his identity and more about protecting his heart from the messiness of true human need. He was fully committed to the anonymous ministry, despite its crushing complexity. Enzo went straight to the youth utility closet. The request for a decent, reliable used truck was gone. In its place, a triumphant new message. My Father in heaven, thank you. The ad was perfectly timed. I found exactly the vehicle I needed, a reliable used pickup, and the price was a miracle. You truly guide those who serve. Glory to God. Enzo smiled, satisfied with the anonymous outcome. At 6 a.m., he was tidying the main sink in the janitor's closet when Russell clocked in. Russell was humming, but he stopped right beside Enzo, watching him coil an extension cord with intense, quiet contemplation. That helper, he started, his gaze sweeping over the cleaning cart. The one who answered my prayer, the one who helped the truck guy. Enzo froze. Yeah? Russell continued, his voice barely a whisper. I've been thinking about him. The Lord works in mysterious ways, that's what we say. But miracles, they need a vessel. They need a human hand. And that hand, I think, uses green marker. Russell slowly lifted his hand and gently tapped the bright green marker Enzo kept habitually clipped to the breast pocket of his uniform shirt. And they used the specialized industrial-grade duct tape, the stuff we keep locked up, to tape envelopes. And the envelope, Enzo, it was too thick for a paycheck. Only a bank withdrawal looks like that. He looked Enzo directly in the eye, and his own eyes were wet with tears of revelation. You're the helper, aren't you, Enzo? Enzo was speechless. His elaborate firewall was gone, breached not by a financial audit or a surveillance camera, but by the simple, observant, and faith-filled perception of the one man he'd helped the most. The conversation that followed was intense but brief. Enzo confessed the truth, his wealth, and his desperate loneliness. Russell, instead of condemnation, offered simple, profound grace and a promise of absolute secrecy. He urged Enzo to continue the work, not as logistics guy, but as a man serving a purpose greater than himself. Over the next few weeks, Enzo continued his nightly rounds, using his wealth and network to solve what he could. Russell became his co-conspirator, leaving notes detailing new needs he'd spotted during the day shift. The day came when Enzo knew he had to let go of his final lingering dilemmas. He walked back to the youth utility closet. He stared at the remaining two unsolvable problems, Mrs. Gable's budget deficit and the Aunt Carol forgiveness plea. He took the rag and erased Mrs. Gable's prayer. He confirmed his steadfast boundary. He wouldn't touch the church's internal finances. That was logistics he had to skip. He looked at the forgiveness prayer. He still couldn't fix it. It remained the single painful symbol of the kind of miracle money could not buy. He took the green marker. Before writing, he scratched out a high-level corporate resolution and immediately erased it. Goal: find inner peace. Action: allocate 90% of net worth to philanthropy. KPI: subjective happiness index. He scrubbed it clean. The answer wasn't a formula. He took the forgiveness prayer and unclipped it, moving it to the very top of the board, honoring its significance. It was the problem he accepted he couldn't solve, but had to face. Then, below the newly cleaned space, Enzo wrote his own simple prayer. He used the voice of a man broken by grace. Lord, please help me with the part of me that is still empty. Guide me. He slid the marker back into his pocket. He was still the janitor, but the simple life was over. The purposeful life, the journey of faith, had begun.